There's a most extraordinary event coming up, and I'll try and give you a summary of what's going on. President Biden is about to meet President Putin. There is an elephant in the room, which is the president of the Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky. Interesting, both the president of the Ukraine and the president of Russia have the same first name, Vladimir. And Zelensky is concerned that he's not going to be the first to be met. He's in fact scheduled for a meeting with Mr. Biden in July, I think, in the White House. But Mr. Putin, so fascinating. Mr. Putin has really been in a sort of in a lockdown of his own, a very severe lockdown for about a year. He hasn't met anybody unless they go through an elaborate sort of 2-week quarantine session, and they're disinfected as they go in to see him. And in fact, he's got apparently he's got a dummy office down in Sochi, which he uses, a dummy office which looks exactly like his office in the Kremlin, to give the impression that presumably that he is in fact in the Kremlin after all. For example, the other day he was interviewed by people from the US television channel NBC, and they had to go through this quarantine. So Mr. Biden is probably one of the first people to meet Mr. Putin without all this process of quarantine and care for the 68-year-old Mr. Putin, who after all is getting really very old. Mr. Biden is so fascinating. When you're trying to draw these people, things pop out at you. And one of the things that pops out about Mr. Biden is that his mouth seems to me to resemble the mouth of Ronald Reagan. So my first thought was that he looked a little bit more like like the older Mr. Bush, but no, in fact he looks very much like Mr. Reagan, which probably would help the sort of Russian propaganda that Mr. Biden is elderly and confused. I don't think it does anything to scotch the Biden comment that Mr. Putin was a killer. Anyway, look, there's going to be this 4 or 5 hour meeting very shortly, and what's on the agenda? Well, aside from the fact that there's actually a meeting taking place, which probably is a win-win for Mr. Putin, because I think he's now being taken seriously on the world stage, and probably this is why there's a sort of easing of concerns about his COVID security. I mean, part of this problem is that the COVID vaccine in Russia isn't treated with a lot of with a lot of truth. People think it's sort of nonsense. Sergei Sobyanin, the Moscow mayor, despite the fact that there's this rollout of the Sputnik vaccine, said there's been an explosive growth in COVID in Moscow, and he then went into a very quick holiday for a week, a business trip, bunkering down. So we've got this meeting, which is extraordinary. Does Mr. Putin need to get anything out of it? No, he doesn't. He's already got it simply by being seen on the world stage. Mr. Biden, on the other hand, has got this range of issues that he needs to discuss. On the one hand, he's got all the cybersecurity stuff, and even the dark side issue, which I think the USA is now saying, although it originates clearly in Russia, it's not necessarily sanctioned by Russia. But a lot of this could be said about the various poisonings. And if something is coming from a particular country, it surely is that country's responsibility to stop it. If the country is not sanctioning it, the country should be big enough, strong enough to stop it. Or it needs to say, look, hey, I'm helpless. Then it's necessary to have a new nuclear treaty, a new START treaty. That takes us back to the meeting in Geneva with a bit between President Gorbachev and Mr. Reagan. So back to the extraordinary mouth shape of Mr. Biden. Then there's the issue of prisoners, US prisoners, particularly Paul Whelan and Trevor Reed. Now, Paul Whelan is accused of espionage. Trevor Reed, the most extraordinary case where he was told that he was endangering the police, and there was a very strange court case. But justice in modern Russia is of a different quality. Really, once you're arrested, that's it. Then there's the issue of Syria, and at the moment there's a threat. Mr. Putin wants to close down the last border between Turkey and Syria for international aid. He wants it to go directly through President Assad. Now, really, the person to talk to there probably, I would think, would be Mr. Erdogan, but Mr. Biden and Mr. Erdogan have got problems because Mr. Erdogan has bought missiles from Russia. So again, the international situation is not as clear-cut as it would appear. And finally, we've got these two big powers, and we want to establish some sort of personal rapport. Well, it's not going to be one of friendship in any way. These people have history in what they've said about each other. But maybe what we should look for in today's meeting is whether or not anything, whether or not there is an opportunity of any progress at all in the relationship between these two leaders. And that's really. Did I say that we need the person who feels he's being left out is this little fellow here, Zelensky. Zelensky is the elephant in the room. Zelensky is the person that we should really be thinking about, because what happens in the Ukraine is probably of greatest importance at the moment. So there we are. Here's my cartoon of the meeting, which is due very shortly, and this is the person who's not been invited to it. And please check my other videos and check my other videos, and do subscribe to my channel. So I look forward to further opportunities, and see you soon. Bye bye.